All right, hello everybody. So we're doing the local legislation panel here, and we're going to kick it off. I'm going to pass over to Greg to get us started. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Greg?
Of course. And hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there today. This is Greg Jason. I'm in Eden Prairie, and I'm the statewide team leader in Minnesota. So I'm going to go through a short presentation here. If you see my cat coming back and forth every time he hears voices, he likes to come and join me here, but we'll keep that distraction here. So let me get started. And I can see I'm live on the screen there. So want to give an overview of our state legislative journey here in Minnesota. And if you want a 20-second nutshell of it, you can take action on state legislation. You need to be realistic about the time, the resources, and the knowledge you're going to need. But get started building your state brand and your capacity to execute. So we were very lucky that we had a great foundation established. We, for 2 years, had already had a statewide team which was meeting monthly. We also had a few volunteers which had already gotten endorsements from state legislators or had relationships with state legislators. But that was on a kind of an opt-on, opt-in basis. I'll talk more about the differences between dealing with Congress versus our state, but our state legislators only meet for either 4 or 3 months a year. And there's been some significant learnings with that difference here. But again, we're very fortunate to have a great foundation that we're already talking across the chapters, across the state. Now, this is also brutal truth is just the be realistic side. We are a volunteer-driven organization. We essentially have zero budget, limited understanding of the legislative process, and perhaps more importantly, limited relationship with lobbyists who work. St. Paul is where the capital is in Minnesota. So those are some voids we either had to address internally or externally here. And our reputation, which we had, was that we were a climate group focused on federal legislation because we talked to state legislators about carbon pricing and cash back often. We talked to other groups about that. So we found out our nonpartisan and more moderate voice is unique, but this was a great launching point for us. So one of the analogies I was offered is I felt like we were trying to assemble a puzzle without understanding what it was going to look like when we got started. But we pulled together a team. It has a nickname, the A-Team. It has no relationship to the TV show. But this was a group of 10 plus volunteers which really rolled up their sleeves and got to work. We also need a few people, which I call bird dogs, and we're recruiting more bird dogs and bird dogs to monitor the media, to monitor the committee hearings, to really understand the pulse of what's unfolding before us. We did create tools. We have a wonderful website, which other states could borrow and modify for their use. And we did the things like tracking legislation of interest and also meetings here. And we decided to limit our focus, but in both 2023 and 2024, we did calling campaigns, but on state legislation. And this is very comfortable. This is in the wheelhouse. We have experience with this at the federal level. We just had to organize the effort at the state level. Now, we also did some work which was more external facing. Again, when I talk about building brand and capacity, we started to hold conversations with state legislators, close to 60 of them, and I'll show you where that was done. And we were also gaining advice and getting feedback from the state legislators. And over 2 years, though, and while we're still working on this, we've been able to pivot that we are a group focused on state legislation compared to focusing on federal legislation. We chose a path purposely to try to build coalition and networks. Again, I talked about filling some of those voids like lobbyists and knowledge of the process. We had a long-standing partnership with the Minnesota Environmental Partnership, which are really the green NGOs in the state. We then, last year, we joined the Next Gen Highways Coalition. Interestingly, off of our state experience, CCL National has also joined this group. Most recently, we joined a business-centric group called Clean Energy Economy, but they are nonpartisan and very aligned with wanting to advance clean energy policy in the state. We also, based on advice from legislators, changed our tactics from calling about supporting bills to submitting letters of support. They said that's very visible, not only to other legislators, but also to other organizations. And while we've explored verbal testimony at the end of every committee hearing in our state, you can have a 1-minute spot as citizens, but that's something we haven't done yet. So this map probably looks busy on your screen. The red are the Republican legislators we've reached out to across the state. The blue are the Democratic legislators we've reached out to across the state. This was an amazing effort. So close to 60 legislators split roughly 50-50, and that was on purpose. I'm going to talk a little bit later about the purple boxes, if you can read those, but the purple boxes, 17 of our 67 districts in Minnesota have both Republicans and DFL in the same district. And we felt, and we've gotten very positive feedback, that this is kind of fertile ground to be talking to state legislators about our nonpartisan approach. So I want to go over some lessons learned, some highlights and some lowlights here. If we look basis our experience dealing with Congress at the federal level, the state session simply moves at hyper speed. In the course of 3 months or 4 months, legislation is introduced, goes to committee, gets voted on and passed. We had to adapt to that. We also had to realize that state legislators which had 5,000 bills introduced have very little staff. But this is also a chance for us to educate legislators about those bills. Also, third-party, nonpartisan analysis is virtually non-existent on state legislation, especially on a real-time basis. So we have to make decisions on best available information. Some of the best advice we had was you need to think about feeding state legislators bite-sized portions of information, making it manageable for them. And also, if you're getting started with this, just think about everything CCL National provides you, which you're going to have to replace or replicate at the state level. Now, how did we deal with having 201 state legislators and maybe not having volunteers in every district? One was we've had success with non-constituent lobby meetings. Simply reach out to the state legislators, let them know you'd like to talk to them. You're part of a statewide group. And I just had one yesterday with a Republican senator. So at least we have had success with non-constituent meetings. We also purposely target leaders of committees, leaders in the Senate and the House, and we seek out volunteers trying to match them with some of those thought leaders. And I talked about the purple districts. We have 17 of them in the state. They basically ring the metro area, and every place there's a school or a larger population center. But this has been a more receptive audience with both parties for us to talk. So this is how we dealt with having more state legislators than CCL volunteers. I also want to talk about some lowlights, I call them. These are some things we could have only learned from experience. One was that given the hyper speed of state legislation, when we followed the CCL guidance about needing a majority of the group leaders to give us support to engage on the legislation, many of the group leaders, and there might be some in the audience, or I know there's some at the conference, felt like they were being overloaded with information and being asked to respond on a very short basis. we've talked about that with the statewide team. We just talked about it again, and now we've been able to give that decision-making rights to the A team, and that is the group which is really working in this on a day-to-day basis. We'll still work with Mindy, the regional director, we'll work with Terry, the state coordinator, to make final decisions, but this will help streamline the process. One other just lesson learned here was the conflict which can occur when there's trusted voices from other organizations your volunteers are plugged into on state legislation, and they're giving conflicting advice about whether to support the state legislation or which state legislation to occur. And there needs to be conversations at the chapter levels to talk about this tension which exists. If you're supporting a bill and other trusted voices are not supporting the bill. This surfaced to us on the permitting reform, just as an example. So just to wrap up, we have a lot to accomplish. Our launch and learn was a success. We were able to influence state legislation. We were able to get a clean energy permitting reform bill passed. We also worked with the Next Gen Highway Coalition, getting a transmission right-of-way bill passed, and they will be expanding this work to other states. I saw that Iowa was on the list. There's a call coming up. Our relationship building, our networking with other organizations is starting to build our CCL state brand and capacity to execute. So that's a very brief overview. There's more work we've done. I'll be staying around to take some questions, and I'll turn it back over to the group there in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I think we've got Tony up next to talk about work here. Oh yeah, I can do that. That's
Good. Well, hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to see you all and meet you all. Appreciate the Kansas people that came up. Also, they're critical members of our team in engaging the state legislature, and we've actually been engaging for 4 or 5 years now, and we're kind of operating under the umbrella idea that without a vision, people kind of lose restraint. And our legislature in Kansas is pretty red, and their ideas can turn pretty oppositional quickly. So, you know, if we can't provide them with some kind of a vision with how things should go, they're likely to do some pretty harmful things. In fact, right now they're talking about putting the state energy plan under the purview of the Attorney General. Now, you know, it has no business being under the Attorney General because it shouldn't be things that are being litigated, but that's what we're facing. And so, you know, we're working to get in there and paint some better ideas. Do I push this one? Yeah. So we've been really fortunate in that there is an organization called the Climate and Energy Project that has pulled together most of the climate organizations in Kansas, and they were actually originally financed by a former governor and some really influential state legislators. And they have this one day a year where you can come to Topeka and table. And we've been doing that for 5 years. We used to go and talk about carbon fee and dividend. The last 3 years, if you include this year, we've been talking about a state energy plan because of the IRA and the fact that Kansas is one of only 3 states that has no energy plan whatsoever. So, you know, we really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for us to meet the other organizations, you know, with the different chapters around the state of CCL coming together to work on this, you know, we're able to have a much bigger impact in Topeka on that day. As it says here, you know, there's 125 members of the House of Representatives and 40 senators, and they're only there for 4 months. We have decided to, is it the right or left? Okay, sorry. To focus on the utility committees only. So that's been our sole focus the last 2 years, because the idea of a state energy plan would have to come from them, and there's a lot of resistance, because the utilities committee is kind of in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry in Kansas. We have a huge fossil fuel industry. But, you know, fortunately, we've had this Wealth Day, which is real cool because it's water, energy, air, land, transportation, and health issues all addressed at the same time. And, you know, their goal, they have 4 primary focuses, but we focused in on climate and energy policy. That's what Citizens Climate Lobby does. That's kind of what we do in Washington. And we stay informed on the issues, and then participate. You know, red Kansas Republicans have a super majority in both houses. We have a Democratic governor, and Kansans usually do try to kind of balance that. We hope that continues. Utilities, independent oil, the Cokes, and ALEC really dominate. Our Senate leader is the president of ALEC nationally. So, you know, they really try to bring basically anti clean energy policies to the state. And right now, there's a little tiny energy office that sits under the Kansas Corporation Commission. Kansas Corporation Commission is in the pocket of the utilities in Kansas. And basically, they're keeping anything from happening by starving it. They do not staff the 2-person state energy office. And we feel that that's incredible, probably the first thing that we need to happen, just like the Admiral was saying. You know, it's where the financing is, and we need financing for a state energy office, so that then we could create a state energy plan that would be, you know, worthwhile having. And we're focused on that. And we met with every single utility member last March, and we took great notes, just like we do at CCL. We took meeting notes, and we know exactly where each one of them stands. And it was quite remarkable how many Republicans had positive things to say about what we're trying to do. But leadership is the big issue. And I keep hearing over and over, that's who we need to go engage. And we need to figure out what's in it for him and what's in it for Kansas. And we need to make a very compelling argument of that. And, you know, without a vision, you know, he loses restraint and creates things like the Attorney General being in charge. And we really have a radical Attorney General. So these are the folks that we engaged with. We know them all. They know us. You know, that we made this one sheet that we took around. And in fact, I brought some of these if anybody would like a copy, that summarize what we're shooting for with a Kansas energy plan. And one of our state senators helped us create this, our Lawrence state senator. And she actually, actually used the resources of the state of Kansas to do it. But, you know, it's a bill that she's interested in. Showing, for instance, on the right-hand side, what other states are doing and what components are in each state energy plan. We really feel like clean energy needs some guidance in our state. There's just not much of it going on, and they're avoiding our state because we're sort of hostile. You know, in the House, we've had a few victories this year on the distributed energy generation front. The committee chairman helped rooftop solar late in the last session. There was a compromise with net metering legislation between Clean Energy Business Council and the legislature. And we can now generate more than 1% of our energy in our, it was limited at 1%. It's now unlimited, what the utility will accept from rooftop generation. So that was a big win by the Climate and Energy Project. There's still resistance to utility solar. They think that, you know, they'll be overlords of the rural landowners. That's kind of how the opposition is positioning it, with a whole lot of misinformation and conspiracy theories about what solar will do to the soil, or what's wind will blow, the turbines will blow up and kill cattle, everything under the sun. You know, they've been discussing parallel generation as the financial mechanism, basically, on how people get paid when they produce solar, and made some progress there. There's going to be, you know, some standards and some minimums. And then the Senate is where it's going to be real tough. The man who our majority leader put in as the chairman of the committee basically does what the majority leader says. And he also comes from an extremely conservative district. And, you know, he could not propose anything clean energy, you know, without being run out on a rail. So, you know, it really boils down to the majority leader. And I think we're gonna try to focus on him when we roll over this year. But we're working on those issues. It's really nice to hear what all the rest of you guys are doing. I have to say it's about as much as we can handle to put together, you know, a state energy plan initiative, and still do the CCL stuff we have to do. So Senator Francisco, she helped us create all this stuff. She feels that a good approach would be state building codes, be a good first step, so that, you know, there's a lot of talk right now about building homes. You know, there's not enough stock, and if we had a state building code instead of a county by county building code, we could, you know, start making some progress in that area, and it would up the awareness of the things that are needed to be done for clean energy. And of course, that's an initiative that CCL supports. So that's probably something we'll be discussing on how we can help with that. But this was us at Wealth Day, and you know, we were really able to see a lot of people. We didn't have this many people this year, but that was a couple of years ago. And they're just from all over the state. We have Wichita, Manhattan, Topeka, Kansas City, many from Kansas City, thanks to Jennifer. And that's great. And I think that's pretty much what I have. Oh, we've got another thing from the Climate and Energy Project coming up in November, where we'll be able to meet and talk about these things further. And I'm looking forward to kind of getting a sense of how we can be of value. I'm not sure they're pushing for a state energy plan until we get rid of the supermajority. Because, you know, that if something would pass, you know, the governor's office, the supermajority could override it. And, you know, we want the kind of energy plan that's good for Kansas and not just a state energy plan that's good for oil. Thanks. That's it for my presentation.
Thank you. Yeah. I got through mine really quick, and Greg and Tony both covered a lot of what I was going to discuss as well. Like I had a lot of similar experiences, or we did as a chapter. Oh yeah. So I'm going to quickly go through a couple of points that I was going to dwell on. First thing to say is this was kind of recent for us. We did some local engagement in the past, but it was really only in the last couple of years that we started setting more comprehensive goals for engaging, especially with the state legislature. Prior to that, it was more maybe there was a single bill or something like that that we thought was really important, and then we would jump in. But again, within the last couple of years, we started really focusing on the session coming up. Nebraska has a unicameral that makes it a little bit unique, but there are a lot of similarities too, especially like the restricted timelines that you have, which I'll talk about a little bit. I'm going to skip over the city stuff, but so yeah, in 2023, we as I mentioned before, we'd go from, you know, a bill here or there to trying to find out and parse through all the bills that might have a climate impact and pick the most important ones and engage on those. In 2023, we focused on 11 priority bills and then 12 this year. So that's a lot. And we learned a lot going through that. So hopefully I can pass along, you know, what we figured out as we went through that. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about what worked well with this, like what our experience, you know, what positive experiences we had with this. I would say first and foremost, it felt like it could be really effective. I help with onboarding new members, and I always tell them the same story. And this is something that a chapter member had told me shortly after I joined. He was someone who had a friend that was a staffer in one of our federal offices. And he asked the staffer, how many contacts do you need to get before a topic is actually raised to the level where you're talking about it with a member of Congress? And then I'll ask the new join to guess that number. And the number I usually get almost inevitably is a huge number, 200, 2,000, 5,000. I think what they have in mind is like online petitions, maybe is my best guess. They think that much noise needs to be generated before anybody cares. And then the answer he got was about 7. And that always blows people away. And the point obviously is that you have a lot of power. Most people are not bothering to do this. If you're a voice calling in, that can make a huge difference. And if that's true with the federal offices, with bills that get more notoriety, how many fewer people have any idea what's going on in the Nebraska unicameral or bother to reach out to them? And that was really, you know, one of the folks that moves in the climate circles in Lincoln was a former state senator. And he was talking to me at a tabling event one time, and he said, one of the reasons I left is I got so tired of being in these hearings, and that I knew that the topic was important, impactful, a lot of people would care about it, but there was nobody there testifying except the interest groups. It was just heartbreaking. And that also tells you that there's people just aren't engaging, aren't noticing. It was never on my radar, so I definitely don't blame anyone. And the last point to make there is, once we started doing this, that was sort of borne out. In cases where we would go to public hearings, and at least one, the committee actually read out the number of support and oppose public comments. And we can work our way backwards and determine that we were a vast majority of the feedback for the hearing for that bill, because there's people really aren't engaging there. So again, that's maybe the most important thing. You really have a big impact if you do this. But there's all sorts of other knock-on benefits. a lot of which were already talked about. For one, luckily for us, our session kind of landed in a spot that was, there was less going on. We were seeing less movement with our offices. And it was kind of nice to have a flurry of activity and have some wins to celebrate during that off period. And then also it felt like a new audience came out of the woodworks when we started working on local legislation for whatever reason. People that we didn't necessarily see in our chapter meetings that maybe weren't as interested in either lobbying or LTEs or that kind of thing. They were just more engaged here. And that was kind of nice. Similarly on social media, we found higher engagement when we started engaging in the local session. And then a big one, a huge one, maybe it's up there with the most important, is just the collaboration with other climate groups. I'll get a little bit more into this in the next slide, but we really leaned heavily on groups that were already working at the local level, just because we didn't have that expertise of looking through the bills and trying to determine. We'd often, before we set one as a priority, do our, best effort at figuring out like what the messaging is and whether we should support it. But we relied heavily on them, and then those relationships kind of continued on. We're just in more regular contact with them because of that. All right. So challenges, there's definitely challenges. Maybe the most important is this whole exercise made me really appreciate the national team, having someone to do that work, because especially under a condensed timeline with bill text that's hard to parse, not understanding where exactly it even is. Is it being marked up? Is it the same bad bill? Is it better now because it went? So yeah, there's a lot to keep track of, especially if you're trying to set a goal of engaging comprehensively. There's a question of whether you oppose bills. Like there were some that were pretty awful that came through this last couple of sessions. And what you really don't want to do is shoot yourself in the foot, go in, opposing a bill and then get tagged as a partisan group because you're doing that. But there were some that we felt like it was worth making members aware of. And that was sort of our compromise, I guess, is kind of phrasing it as, hey, this is a thing that we're looking at. If you would like to make a comment, rather than blasting something out, making it sound like the chapter is asking us to go in. And similarly with testimony, we wouldn't necessarily identify ourselves as a CCL chapter, but individuals that have something to say about this bill. And then the messaging as well. An example might be, we had some bills related to public power, which Nebraska has, that were going to maybe turn it partisan. And we tried to focus on it's working really well as our message, rather than this is awful or whatever, that kind of thing. But it's something you need to think through, and it's still a risk, even what we did. And so it's a question you want to ask. And the last is just, trying to figure out communication. Because of the shortened timelines, it's really easy to inundate your volunteer group. Especially if you have your regular national stuff going on and all of a sudden the hearings, the date was set for 2 days from now. Are you firing out more emails? One thing that we did, and this was kind of a lesson learned from the first year that we did this, is that we had like an opt-in. If people were interested in engaging on local legislation, then here's where you can sign up and we'll keep you informed. So that helped a little bit with that. So key takeaways, the coalition building was huge for us, and it was both necessary, as I mentioned, for analyzing the bills, but also just a great benefit going forward, because there are just relationships that it reminded me of the opening with Mary talking about the various groups that they brought together. We're actually still collaborating with a lot of them and have ideas for more things to do as a larger group. We also coordinated a lot with other chapters. Communication, again, really big. You can easily do a wall of text on some bills, which you want your nice talking points, exactly how to do it. The local legislation can be weird with different rules, trying to really compress that down into an actionable thing that someone can do. And then, yeah, just know if you have the bandwidth, because it did suck up a lot of the oxygen for us, especially because it's such a condensed timeline. It really took away from other things, honestly. Like we did less tabling and things like that, and that's a trade-off. So Yeah, I think that's mostly it for mine as well. So it seems like we do have a little bit of time for questions.
I see that you use social media, which is something I was gonna suggest, because with
Mhm.
chapters not having a lot of money to get the message out, and when you're dealing with politics, and I currently am engaged in a campaign for state legislator in Minnesota. So trying to get the message out and having the short, concise messages using social media. So there's some really good strategies here, because if you ever hope to change the supermajority, you've gotta get the hearts and minds of the voters changed and get this information to them. And there's a lot of information, as we saw from the last presentation. So how do you break that down into bite-sized pieces? And then maybe a link to it. For more information, you can go to this report or this thing.
Right.
So a lot of challenges, but it looks like you've learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah, one thing, and I can let you guys see if you have a comment on that. For us, we noticed that the coalition was really important there as well, because we'd see some of their alerts, and if it seemed reasonable, forwarding that along. And once we were already connected on bills that were worth engaging on, then sharing each other's talking points is we found ours kind of, that's part of the reason we had a higher engagement, is we had these other groups sharing out, you know, information on when a hearing was coming up, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a good deal.
You know, since we're nonpartisan, we have an organization that I'm part of. It's called Kansans Together, and that's our whole focus is social media. And we spent quite a bit of time and money on the constitutional amendment in Kansas on the abortion issue, and we felt like we had a real good impact on that, because we targeted through, you know, the social media outlets, exactly the voters, the specific counties where we were likely not to do well, and we had a great impact on that. But we've also been promoting the state energy plan and making people aware of that. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think we need to keep that going. We can't really do it through Citizens Climate Lobby, but we have an associate group that can. And I think that's a good idea.
Looks like Greg, you had something to add too.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in with some of our experiences here. Social media from the legislator's perspective is not as common for state legislators as it is with members of Congress. However, the state legislators which are on social media are usually very responsive. So for example, when the clean energy permitting reform was introduced and it was a bipartisan bill, I sent a tweet out on Twitter, and I got responses from 3 of them. And so that just shows you, for the legislators with the small staff, they tend to handle that themselves. So one outreach is to your member base and trying to influence, but not all state legislators are on Twitter. Some are on Instagram. It's been interesting to talk to them about their experiences, not very positive experiences about social media. But for the handful which are on, it's another way of cultivating the relationship.
Any other questions? Yeah.
When you say you reached out on social media, what specific media do you use?
Yeah, Greg, did you hear that? The question was, when you say you reached out on social media, what did that look like?
It was a simple thank you to Senator Franz and Senator Mitchell and Senator Pratt and Senator Nelson for being sponsors of the clean energy permitting reform bill in the state. So the message was short. It just said, thank you, so and so and so, for sponsoring this bill. And then from that, got 3 responses. What's that?
What platform? But you said Twitter, right?
Twitter, yes.
How about you guys? Do you use Twitter also, or Facebook, or Instagram?
we did for this, that push that I had on that slide. That said, it was more heads up about hearings and bills than anything else. And so it was kind of amplifying that more so than the result.
That's
But
Twitter.
we should have done, that was, yeah.
What we used was targeted Facebook ads, multiple times, and with links to YouTube videos explaining, what it was that we were hoping to impact. And we spent a pretty good amount on clean energy. So, it's not like nobody's ever heard of it in Kansas. And not clean energy bill, but state energy plan.
Hmm.
And the fact that we have none, that we're just flying at the direction of the fossil fuel industry in Kansas.
We have similar issues in South Dakota. So when you target individuals or you target groups?
We purchased the voters, active voters in the state of Kansas. I think it was $80 or something.
And you can target them on Facebook.
Not all of them had Facebook accounts. Then you had to weed through them and find folks, that do. And, so you need somebody that's pretty good with data manipulation. But, they're politicos, you can find them because that's what they do. And it was effective. There was a lot of money spent on that constitutional amendment, so there's no way to know how much impact we had, but we went after it. We spent some money.
Takes a fair amount of knowledge as to how to do that too, doesn't it?
Right. We have a member on our team of Kansas Together that's really good at that, but she's teaching us too.
Get the young people involved, they have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but a Politico really knows.
Yeah.
Somebody who's working for campaigns
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
I was fortunate that I had a couple of really good videographers who were willing to donate their time to help me come up with
Young
some
people for
commercials
that, yeah.
that are informative but have a cleverness to them
Right.
that will make people hopefully want to share them more likely.
Sure.
And if we ask, if you support this, please like and share.
Yeah.
So get beyond that, my circle to the ripple effect of other circles.
Check out this video. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so using Facebook commercials and YouTube ads, we're getting the word out way beyond what my budget can afford.
Right. Yeah. That seemed to be it. And if we could ever get to a point in Kansas where there is an actual bill to approve appropriations for a state energy plan and an office, a separate office away from KCC, which is what it should be. We could implement a lot of that kind of stuff to help it along.
Do you have a proposed plan that you can point people to ask them to support?
Well, that's what this is. These are our vision, without a vision, but it may not be a vision that everybody holds. It'll probably have to be negotiated.
Like everything.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of folks, we're not really energy experts or anything, but we can read, and so we can put something together with our senator. And it should be legitimate. And gosh, Colorado's got a great energy plan. They built this big loop where they're gonna provide 80% of the power that the northern face needs by 2030, and they're building all these solar and wind farms along this huge loop that runs on the eastern plains of Colorado. But they've got a democratic legislature. They've got a bunch of people that moved there from California.
Well, and when you've got people with big money that feel like they stand to lose something with any of these plans, they've got the money
right.
for their messaging,
Oh.
and how do you overcome, their messaging with a different message that they're not going
No
to
doubt.
support. It's a challenge.
We did get a hearing on a state energy plan in the House and Senate. They came together last October, and the oil industry came in and spoke. The solar industry came in and spoke. We had a representative from Iowa come in and speak about their your clean energy plan. And unfortunately, the person that was supposed to come and speak to us, something came up and we ended up getting a lobbyist for the oil industry to come speak to us. So kind of blew that, but it was a start and they're talking about it. And, you know, we definitely got to hear what concerns, but for the most part, I think people are aware that we need this. You know, that climate change is real.
Now, with people with a short attention span, it's,
Right, yeah,
Yes.
how do you tap into their bandwidth, like the Admiral
Yeah.
said, when everything else is coming on, like
Yeah.
gangbusters.
you do it in sound bites and you give people who have the bandwidth to research further links to some good research.
Yep. We need a gubernatorial candidate that this would be a big issue for, because our governor is not. She's education and Medicaid, and that's it. That's all she wants to talk about.
That's how she got elected.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right, well, it looks like we're at time. So thank you all. We've got yeah, go ahead, yeah. Did you wanna,
No, I was just saying, the three of you, how do you have any
No,
parting comments?
no, I think a lot has been covered.
Yeah, I do too. I really appreciate you guys here.
Yeah. Greg, do you want to say anything? Last words before we leave?
No, but just you can have an impact. I think all three of our teams have taken different routes there, but just get started and learn as you go.